Hey, Mickey.
Hey, Bob.
Hey, what you got there, Mickey? It's an iPad. What's on the iPad?
Good question.
Looks like you're trying to figure that out yourself. Well, listen, I'll just entertain the folks while you get your shit together.
There you go.
Yeah. Looks like a map of what do you call those? A relief map? We used to call them in elementary school, where you can see like the geographic features.
That's not the important part, Bob. Just what is it? What geographic landmass is being pictured here?
Oklahoma, Arkansas. You tell me. What
Close.
Is it?
Iowa.
Oh, yeah.
We're celebrating the demise of the Iowa primary, a fraud that's been perpetrated on the American people for too long.
Yeah, I just read that like 5 minutes before we started taping. Biden wants to rearrange the primary schedule.
Yeah, the Iowa caucus was always a fraud because it's a caucus, and the media decided, hey, if we go and count the people who are on one side or the other in a caucus, we can sort of turn it into a semi-primary and make a big deal of it and get a news story out of it. The problem is the media was terrible at going in and counting the people in the caucus before they reformed their groups and traded and swapped. So they didn't really count it very well. And then the state party couldn't count the votes, like not more than once. They didn't know the winner. So fuck them. Their history.
Seems like a pretty stiff punishment.
Well, what do you have to do to lose your first in the nation status? How many times can you fuck up?
Look, I just glanced at this, but apparently Biden wants the order to be South Carolina first, then Nevada and
New Hampshire, which is bad. Which is bad because New Hampshire is good.
And then another red state plus a blue state. Michigan is the blue state, and what's the red state?
I don't know. You know more than I do.
But so what does he want to skew it further red? Like so that the
he wants to give
will be pulled to the center,
argument. The argument is there. I guess there are a couple arguments. One is that there insufficient representation of people of color and in Iowa and New Hampshire, which is certainly true. The other is that South Carolina will ensure give a leg up to candidates like him who are not, who are sort of more centrist. It's also obviously maybe a debt he owns Clyburn. Clyburn from South Carolina was the guy most obviously, he and Steny Hoyer were the people most obviously screwed in the shakeup of the Democratic House leadership. And Clyburn very graciously took a senior role and is being very civil about it. But maybe he got something in the deal, which is we're going to make your state the first in the nation primary. He's a politician after all. So
it sounds like you briefly touched on this. This may be a self-serving thing for Biden, though. He thinks it may favor him. Because
right. I guess that's right.
Here's the most alarming development of the week. I'm reading from the New York Times of November 28th. That's Monday. Front page. Strong election showing eases Democrats' fears of Biden in 24. And you can guess what the lead paragraph is. They're saying, oh, well, now that the Democrats did fine in the midterms, or at least much better than expected, it's okay for Biden to be the nominee. No. Listen, this may sound like a little thing, but I was reading a little transcript of him talking about the Ukraine war, and he was talking about Kherson, which is fine. You can talk about Kherson. You shouldn't call it Fallujah, which he did, because Fallujah is in a different country and is from another war, Mickey. Now, the good news is that there is a parallel. I mean, is that good news or is it bad news? Fallujah, it was occupied by the enemy. We drove them out. Great. I mean, it's a little thing, but it happens all the time.
He's making a very sophisticated analogy. The two situations are quite similar, right? It's not like he calls every city Fallujah. It's only the ones that we got driven out of and came back to.
That's what I'm saying. I guess it would be worse if he called it Philadelphia. I guess that would be worse, but it's not great. And look, he's 80 and you're signing up for him to be president in 6 years. And I'm not saying he's got some major cognitive disease. He's undergoing the kind of decline we all undergo, but we can tell that it's moving at a reasonably brisk pace. And if you extrapolate over 6 years, and I'm not exaggerating here, he will be a man not fit to be president. In fact, it won't take 6 years.
I think later in the week he said, "Well, we'll see if I run for president." Or he issued so he poured some cold water on this idea.
We can't wait for him to see. I mean, this Times piece makes it sound like the Democratic elders, if there even are such things anymore, anybody actually running the show, are kind of fine with him running. Well, that is not acceptable. It's quite possibly suicide in the election. And if it's not that, it's irresponsible from the nation's point of view. This is crazy. I'm sorry.
I agree, but I don't. It's not clear who the alternative is, and B, we might be in for a soft landing in the economy. Things might be looking very good in a year and a half. The Ukraine war might have. We might have moved to the negotiated settlement that you advocated in the Washington Post yesterday. Was it today?
It came out today. It'll be in the print paper on.
So I mean, think Biden's record may look pretty good by the end of his term, and those people tend to get reelected even if their second term is going to be a disaster, and obviously a disaster. That happens all the time, right?
So wait, you're saying he could get reelected?
Yeah.
That's not enough. I mean, first of all, he could not get reelected. He's like the worst candidate we can put out there, with the possible exception of Kamala Harris. And, so why? I mean, sure, it could happen and lightning could strike. All kinds of things could happen. No, he could win. He could beat Trump. On the other hand, he is one of the few people that Trump could beat in the Democratic Party. You just can't take this chance, A, and again, B, from the nation's point of view, it's crazy. There's no way he's going to be up to the top.
What seems to be happening on the Republican side is Trump is fading fast. There are already national polls showing DeSantis is ahead of him. The analysis of this ridiculous dinner with Kanye West and Nick Fuentes and Milo, the best I've seen is from Ann Coulter. He was desperate for attention. His campaign had been fizzling. The announcement sucked. Nobody's endorsing him. He's announcing an endorsement from the sewer commissioner in New York or something. I mean, he desperately needed some celebrities who seemed to be flocking to him and kissing his ring. He's not doing well. And so if it's DeSantis, I don't see. I mean, it doesn't bother me if Biden runs against him because I don't mind DeSantis. But it sort of lowers the stakes, doesn't it? Because you're not running against Trump.
Well, I mean, I'm not convinced that DeSantis isn't bad news for the country. I'm still trying to figure him out. There's a piece in the Atlantic by Mark Leibovich.
It was very weak. It was very thin soup for Mark Leibovich. It was like a quick job. It quoted a couple of never Trumpers. It said some obvious things that he lacked charisma. And,
it wasn't about that. It was that kind of. I took it more to be like, the guy doesn't obviously have any friends. It isn't clear if there's anybody who likes him on the basis of interpersonal interaction, and he's bad at it. He's like, he's one of these guys who it was a governor's conference. It's like he's the guy at the governor's conference who's like not hanging out with anybody. He doesn't have the gregariousness of a politician. People don't like him. It was kind of an agnostic piece in the sense that he said, look, I don't. Leibovich withheld judgment. He just said this one thing we know about him. He doesn't seem to be good at like social life.
Okay, well that was useful, but
here's another useful thing was this take by Daniel Larison, I think both in his newsletter Eunomia and in Responsible Statecraft, about his foreign policy. And then there was another piece in Compact that took a more charitable view, and I thought in a very strained way. But from my point of view, there's no good news on the foreign policy front. And here's a line from a letter that DeSantis, or an op-ed that DeSantis and Tom Cotton co-authored in the course of opposing, I guess, the Iran deal. Here's what he said about Iran's leadership. They will stop at nothing to end our way at life. We don't need another hysterical paranoid in the White House.
So no Trump has rubbed off on DeSantis' foreign policy?
Well, the Compact piece made the argument that a little had, as I recall, well, first of all, Trump wound up not having all that Trumpist to foreign policy, in the end. But
okay, but
I know what you mean, like less interventionist and so on. The only thing they had that I recall was him saying when Obama was kind of getting us into Syria by sending weapons and so on, saying, hold on, not so fast, which is not a bad sign. On the other hand, Obama was a Democrat. You got the natural tension.
Yeah, but he has to run in the Republican primaries, and the Republican primaries are not big on foreign interventions now. So you would think he would shift in that direction naturally.
Yeah.
The Lynn Cheneys of the party do not are a distinct minority in the Republican electorate. So I'm just sort of not worried that he's going to be a neocon on foreign policy.
Well, he sounds like one. He actually sounds like one. On the other hand, he's in Florida. So you could argue that accounts for Cuba, Venezuela, even Iran in a way. And so you might think once he's no longer so dependent on the Florida voters, he could change. I don't know. I don't know that. I think basically we have no idea. He's kind of a black box in a lot of ways. And
he's not such a black box domestically. And the one thing he's good at, I assume that Leibovich is right about him not being gregarious. I don't really care that much. He's very good at the televised set piece, where he stands up and he reads a prepared text. Maybe he takes a few hostile questions.
And then turns around and says to the high school students, and take off your goddamn masks.
Well, he was trying for a point of humor, and he sounded like a highway patrolman.
No, he wasn't trying for humor. He wasn't trying for humor. Absolutely wasn't. Watch the video. In fact, he even after he realizes that he shouldn't look so harsh on him, he says, well, you can leave him on if you want.
Okay.
Even after that, you see that the anger is still apparent. And this is, one thing I think you can be kind of clear on is that people say, well, is he authoritarian like Trump? I would say Trump has authoritarian attitudes. DeSantis has an authoritarian temperament. He's actually more of a thug and bully, I think, well, not more of a bully than Trump by nature. And I don't know, it's more of like an emotional stance. Whereas for Trump, you get the sense it's more like a strategy that's worked, the bullying.
Right, but Trump actually puts the strategy into place. I mean, he did, if he could have overturned the election by muscling these state delegations, he would have.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so that was a validation of those people who said, and I guess I argued with, that said he had an authoritarian temperament and it would have real world consequences. I sort of can't see DeSantis doing that. He seems more conventional.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, look.
Trump will do it, to save a business deal. He'll bully and try to intimidate people wherever he can. As long as the deal's not dead, he'll give it one last try. And that works in business, and it worked on the border. It's just not what you're supposed to do with an election.
Yeah, well, anyway, I mean, if you're saying, well, Bob, don't worry, Biden might lose, but he'll lose DeSantis. That's not consoling to me. It's consoling to you. You like DeSantis. Okay. I don't.
Well, I just think it lowers the temperature. But
it doesn't. It doesn't necessarily. We don't know.
Anyway, I still don't think he's going to run. And
DeSantis or Trump?
Biden.
Oh, Biden? Well,
I don't think Trump's going to be the nominee.
We can't take any chances. By the way, thank you for mentioning my Washington Post piece. I encourage people to read it about why, if Russia is up for a peace deal, we don't know that, but if they are, it would be not only in our interest, but in Ukraine's interest.
I thought there was the best point you made was at the last point where you said, Zelensky's maybe fighting off these ultra-nationalist Ukrainians who want to keep the war going. Mm-hmm. And if we pressure him, that gives him an excuse. Sorry, the Yankees made me do it.
Yeah, Biden would do him a favor by conspicuously putting pressure on him.
Right. And the one point I thought I wasn't sure was right is...
Can we stop here? They're all right.
Okay. Well, you said that if the war sort of stopped now and Russia kept the territory it had, it would be perceived as a defeat for Putin. I don't think that's necessarily true.
Yeah, I think that's... it's debatable. I quoted, a very smart guy from the Rand Corporation saying that, and it's certainly true that we've already turned this into much more of a cautionary tale than Crimea was. In other words, it's something, anybody, Putin in the future or anybody, they would go, this didn't work out so well, at a minimum. Now, 10, 20, 30 years from now, will people look back and say, hey, they wound up with more territory? That's possible. But I just want to say two things. The bulk of the article is about not the bulk. A lot of it's about the fact that realistically, you're just not going to roll them back all the way to the borders. That would be great. You probably can't do it, period. You certainly can't do it without incurring great risk of everything going haywire and the world blowing up. And that's just a reality. The last thing I'd say is on that, and I'm sorry, then I'll let you talk. Because I, more than anyone, want to consistently reinforce the norm of abiding by international law and not invading countries. However, the fact that we have violated that norm and law at least twice in the last few decades actually literally makes enforcing it less valuable in the future. Because most of the world looks at it and doesn't take it seriously. They see the hypocrisy and they view it cynically, and it's just not as valuable. We have squandered the currency. We've squandered the asset we had at the end of the Cold War.
The one thing that's clearly true is nobody's as scared of the Russian army as they were before.
Right.
So that loss is sort of baked in the cake.
Yeah.
Anyway, I defer to you on all matters so far.
Just quickly, I'd say if you did a deal, you would leave some sanctions in place forever. You would leave at least some non-trivial cost, and say if he wants that to end, he has to vacate entirely. Now on the Ukraine, can I do a quick Ukraine update? Sure. I make the case that if you look at the three possible things that can happen: stalemate, Russia gains more territory, Russia loses a lot of territory. It's far from clear that Russia's going to lose much more territory on balance. They'll lose some, they'll gain some. What's going on in Bakhmut kind of makes the point. That's this thing that Russia has been trying to get forever. It's a town of some strategic significance, not huge. And it's starting to look now like Russia may be in the process of taking it. We've got, the Institute for the Study of War saying things like, well, even if Russian troops continue to advance toward and within Bakhmut, and even if they force a controlled Ukrainian withdrawal from the city, Bakhmut itself offers them little operational benefit. And then they go on to say, and look at the cost that it's come at for Russia in terms of casualties. And I just want to say, I think Russia has won that part of the Bakhmut war because there have been huge casualties on both sides. Either the Post-Times did a piece about how Ukrainian casualties are rolling into some hospital from Bakhmut. The difference is, with Russia, half of them are prisoners, right? It's largely a Wagner Group operation. Wagner recruits from, among other places, Russian prisons. They say, you come serve 6 months and you're you're out of prison forever. And even the people in the Wagner Group who aren't I don't think many people in Russia are going to mourn the loss of convicted felons probably, but even the Wagner Group people who aren't prisoners, some of them aren't Russian. None of them count as casualties formally. They don't give them state funerals. So it just doesn't hit home politically way it would if they were real soldiers.
There was this poll that showed that only 25% of Russians want to stay in Ukraine, down from over 50% earlier. So I think Putin is facing a big decline in the war's popularity at home, whether or not there's state funerals.
Yeah, you get the sense, they are really intensively building defensive barriers in various places. I hope that means they don't think they can advance much further and they're starting to hope they can settle for what they have. I'm not sure it means that. But, the less support there is for it politically at home, the better a deal you can get out of them if you do want to talk peace.
What did you make of what did you make of NATO re-extending its offer to Ukraine to join?
Well, I mean, on the one hand, it's just this ritual they do all the time. Last time they did it, they didn't really mean it. It was just a way to cause an immense amount of trouble in the world. They did go on to make them de facto members by funneling weapons and training the troops. But, on the other hand, on the one hand, it's seeming like a meaningless ritual. On the other hand, the one problem with peace negotiations is that at this point, I think the trust is so low on both sides that the question arises, how do you trust, how does Ukraine trust Russia not to invade again? And how does Russia trust Ukraine to stick with a deal? Since in Russia's view, Ukraine didn't stick with the Minsk deals and so on. And from Russia's point of view,
how does Ukraine trust Russia not to invade again?
Well, that's why I was thinking, would you have to wind up saying, okay, Ukraine is in NATO, or would that be part of the negotiation? I don't know. Like you say to Putin, okay, you want to keep that territory? Then the only way Ukraine is going to feel secure is I don't know. I'm just saying I'm starting to be able to imagine a way peace talks actually could lead to the formal NATOization of Ukraine, and
I never
just
thought
occurred
I'd
to
see
me
today.
today, so it's probably wrong. Well, you probably won't, but I mean, almost anybody would say I'm wrong about that.
So, can we go to my hobby horses quickly?
Child tax credit.
Politics generally, the campaigns to pass a child tax credit and to pass an amnesty in the lame duck session have started as predicted. Don Graham wrote a very, very mild-mannered piece saying perhaps the Democrats, an amnesty deal is within reach. Perhaps the Democrats should start to consider maybe thinking of some border security measures. Well, if you're going to get a deal, you have to be a little more forceful than that. Mm-hmm. There is a deal to be had. I don't think any of the Democrats are willing to pay the price, even though they're looking at, if the 2024 outlook is the conventional wisdom is right, they're looking at a grim few years out of power in Congress, even if they win the White House. So I don't see where they think the amnesty is going to come from. It's possible they don't care as much about amnesty because Biden is letting millions of people across the border, and they care more about that since the amnesty people aren't going to be deported. If you wanted to maximize the immigrant presence in America and maximize the free flow of people, you would say, let's not have an amnesty and let's just let everybody in. I don't know. The child tax credit, of course, is being championed by James Bennett's brother, who's a senator from Colorado.
Didn't Jason DeParle say in the Times that it's going to be an uphill battle for them to get child tax credit?
He did, and most people think it's an uphill battle in the lame duck, less so in the long term. It's incredibly expensive, which they're trying to cover up by having it only enacted for a year. Mm-hmm. It's $1.6 trillion for 10 years, so that's $160 billion a year. There are various ways to cut it back, but it's wildly expensive, and it would, Ross Douthat is for it because it encourages people to have babies, but there's even the people who are for it for that reason admit it won't have much effect, and people like me say it will have an effect in enabling an underclass culture of no work and no fathers. But the more interesting thing is the Republican race for House Speaker. McCarthy is making some gains, but then the reports say, well, but then there's no obvious alternative. That's his argument, is there's no alternative to me. You don't vote for me, the Democrats are going to, pick off 4 people from our side, and we're going to have a speaker the Democrats choose. And but there is an alternative. The alternative is Steve Scalise. So I would, if you had money to bet, I would bet on Steve Scalise. Not that I have tremendous affection for Steve Scalise, but I don't think he's as weak as McCarthy is. There's a runoff primary in Georgia. Everybody seems to be resigned to Warnock winning.
Yeah.
But sorry.
Yeah, it just seems like Herschel hasn't had a good week. I mean, he kind of only half campaigned, I gather. And is this a new woman who came out and on the record publicly, like, here I am, here's my name, I was his girlfriend for 5 years, he's a completely horrible, unstable person? She's
I
not
thought
one
there
of
were 5 of them.
There's like 5 of them?
Yes.
But she's like out there, visible. And I think, and then what else? Oh, the fact that he lives in Texas and Georgia's a different state.
All signs, all signs pointing to a Republican red wave. So who knows? Who knows what's actually going to happen? It depends. A lot of it depends.
What'd you just say? All signs
pointed to a Republican red wave, and it didn't happen. So you can't trust the polls and the conventional wisdom. One side might be demoralized. The Warnock side may think, hey, the stakes aren't as high anymore. We're not fighting for Democratic control of the Senate. And the Republicans may think the same way. So it's, a lot of it, I think, will come down to the mechanics of turnout. The early voting was very pro-Democrat, but now they're getting some early voting from, Walker areas. So who the hell knows? The interesting thing, an interesting thing is that Kemp is playing a role in favor of Walker, and everybody's thinking, well, Kemp's going to run for Senate.
Right, he's the governor?
Governor, and he won a resounding victory. And my line is, he's going to run for president. They all run for president. Why would he not run for president? It's not like he's on Trump's team. Trump hates him, tried to oust him from office. He beat Trump once or twice, and he's not scared of Trump. So why would he settle for Senate? There are many people who have less of a claim to be president than him who have run for president recently.
That's for sure. How about Claire McCaskill? Is that crazy? She's no longer in politics, but she always seems so smart when I see her on TV. She's smart, right?
She never seemed that smart to me. She's amiable.
Yeah,
she's having a great time when she's out of politics, but I don't know. Does she have a vision of America? A vision for America? I don't know. That's an interesting thought. I'd never thought of that.
Do any of them have a vision for America? I have a vision for America. How about me?
There you go.
Hey, here's a dark horse. Here's a dark horse. It's going to sound crazy at first. Sam Bankman-Fried. I just think his contrition tour is going well, I think.
And it turns out he's the last bipartisan because he gave money to both Democrats and Republicans, he says.
You read
I don't quite believe him. I don't quite believe him, but he can bring us together.
Oh, I believe him. He's sometimes he's not consistently honest, probably, but he's often too honest for his own good, I think. Anyway, he says that the Republican money was dark money. In other words, the kind that Citizens United made possible, which you're a dark money fan. I think you were a fan of that ruling.
I'm not a fan of the dark money. I
think I'm
backing off my support of that ruling. I think they could have come up with a narrower ruling that allowed corporations, but only small corporations.
I'm glad you're backing off because
I haven't thought it through.
This is a good example of how Citizens United not only enables more a full-fledged version of oligarchy, but dark oligarchy. You don't even know which oligarchs are running the show.
But is the darkness inherent in Citizens United? I mean, you could have a rule that said corporations can donate, but they can't be dark. I mean, so we don't know what Sam Bankman-Fried donated because he said he did it in dark donations. So because he had to keep up his liberal image for the press, and the media would go crazy if they discovered he donated to the Republicans. But he had this Republican guy on his team who donated to the Republicans openly. So I don't know why he needed all this.
Maybe that guy was giving dark money to the Democrats. Could be.
There you go. But the big thing to me seems to be, was he donating to the Republicans because he's ideologically a Republican, or because he wanted to get some regulations through Congress. And to do that, you have to bribe key Republicans, but not in an ideological sense. Well, he seems to have been, and it's really quirky. He seems to have been ideologically pro-Democrat. I mean, Matt Iglesias said he's responsible for Trump not being in the White House because he gave so much money to the turnout operation. But if you look at his giving, his charitable giving, it's totally weird. It's the greatest refutation of effective altruism there could be, because he gives money to organizations that promote effective altruism. So he gives money to the effective altruism bureaucrats who advise other rich people how to give their money. If the point of effective altruism is to show results, he's not shown any results. He's employing a lot of Will McCaskill's friends and compatriots in bureaucratic organizations.
But if he considers
they're not traditional left. They're not traditional left causes.
No, I think that's true. I think it's true. I mean, we can talk more about this in the Parrot Room, because there's things I wanted to add to our discussion last week about effective altruism and what it is. I realized I had defined it last week in an incomplete way. Do you think just that SBF's this one move of his that he's showing on his contrition tour, which I've never seen before, the way he bows his head in shame? Did you watch any of the videos?
No, I didn't see that.
Oh, you got to see it.
I just thought he had bad
head.
posture.
I'm just wondering if you think it's real and sincere. It just seems so pronounced as to be theatrical. It's like he virtually gets down on the floor and
it's very Japanese, but when the Japanese do it, don't they accept their punishment and often actually commit seppuku? I mean,
yeah, I'm not advocating that.
I'm not advocating that either.
Speaking of violence, what'd you think of Elon's gun tweet? So he tweeted this picture of what, wasn't a real gun. He said, "This is my nightstand. It's got is a pistol that you're wondering if you don't know that I guess it's from some video game or something.
It's a gamer pistol. I mean, right, it's a video game pistol.
You could look at
it. Trigger.
When you first look at it, it looks like a real gun, and there's like 4 Diet Coke cans or something. I think, that's not cool in the current climate. If it looked obviously like not a real gun, that's one thing.
There are other more troubling things. It's when you see, Dean Baker has been kicked off Twitter. Well, why would you kick Dean Baker off Twitter? He's a left-wing economist.
I think he had just criticized Elon, hadn't he?
Well, that's ridiculous. I mean, so that's much worse than the gun. If it's true, on the other hand, Twitter's users are going up quite rapidly, and he doesn't seem to be failing. It's probably freer than it was before, and it's just a question of, on the fringes, is he letting in too many Nazis and kicking out people, for spurious reasons? I don't know what the truth is.
I doubt. I mean, a number of people. There was also this. She's I don't know if she's Chinese or Chinese American or what, but she had criticized, I think, the Chinese government. She was tweeting about the protest. She was kicked off Twitter for a while and then reinstated. And I doubt Elon had a hand in that, but it demonstrates the situation he's put himself in. He obviously does have a conflict of interest in China. He needs to stay in the good graces of the government. He's been better than
Apple
because of Tesla. What's that?
He's been better about it than Apple. Apple, has actually, taken off some featers of that help the protesters communicate.
Well, Apple's in the information.
Tim Cook refuses to say anything about it.
Okay, but let me say, Apple's in the information business. Tesla isn't. So Elon hasn't been asked to make those kinds of compromises. Right. But now that he owns Twitter, he is exposed to that kind of pressure, and we'll see how he handles it. Now,
we know how Apple is handling it. Apple is caving.
Yeah, you either cave or leave. Google left, Apple caved.
But Twitter is banned in China, so that takes away one point of leverage.
It is one point, but they still care about. Look, I don't think he kicked this person off personally or had a hand in it, but this is going to consistently arise where things that look as if they result from some kind of conflict of interest or from his intervention. When people criticize him and get kicked off, which has happened.
Right. All right. Now, I'm a little less scared to criticize him than I was before, but I'm still scared to criticize him.
Are you really?
I was before. I don't want to get zapped. Yeah, I said that a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, you were before when? 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, that was the point of the Viennese coffee house analogy, that you don't want to insult the proprietor.
I
nice
do not,
coffee house we have here.
I do not
be nice to the fat man when he comes around.
I do not delude myself into thinking I rate being on his radar screen. I've been critical on Twitter.
You're closer than I am. You know, you actually interviewed David Sachs on your show, and David Sachs obviously has yours, so you're 2 jumps away from him. I'm 3 jumps because I know you.
Hey, I've chatted with Elon, man. I told you. I interviewed him live on stage years ago. We're like this. We're like this.
I have a gun point, though, as long as you brought up guns.
Okay, gun.
There's all this complaint from people like me about mail-in voting. Okay, you don't quite know who filled out the form. They might be subject to intimidation. It's a little like card check. There could be a Democratic operative standing above your bed in the nursing home. You don't want to piss them off. Add guns to the mix, okay? Open carry in some states, concealed carry in others. You've got guys running around harvesting ballots, and they have guns, okay? How intimidating is that? It's a recipe for total fucking disaster.
Gun harvesters, ballot harvesters with guns?
Yes. They're a quasi army moving through your neighborhood collecting ballots. You're going to tell them no? They have guns.
So you're coming around to my view on gun control?
I just think the easiest way to eliminate this, I'm not for open carry, but the easiest way to eliminate this is to eliminate mail-in voting in its current form.
Yeah.
Have early voting. In person, which seems to be working in Georgia. Absentee voting went down in Georgia. Early mail-in voting went up. That's the obvious compromise. People with guns find it much harder to intimidate you. And that's the solution.
Yeah, no, it's like, these supermarket shootings and school shootings. At first, I thought the answer was gun control. Then I just realized, no, just ban supermarkets and schools. It's simpler. That's what you should do.
That's very witty, Bob. But it's very we survived for centuries without massive mail-in voting, but we did have supermarkets.
Well, we didn't survive for centuries with everyone who has a political axe to grind carrying around a gun, and that's where we're moving.
We actually did.
Thanks to the Republican Supreme Court.
We actually did survive for
in a completely different world 2 centuries ago or something.
Okay, well, but don't say you've modified what you said.
So my alarm just went off. You know what that means?
That means it's time to go to the Parrot Room under our new regime.
Yeah. Well, Go
ahead.
We each get 1 minute to say something we meant to say. I
just said what I meant to say.
Okay. Well, my thing is, some of the reaction to what I've said about Elon Musk so far illustrates that I failed to make my point clear. My issue with him is different from, I think, almost everyone's. I asked for him bringing all these people back on. We'll see how it works out. It's not a big hobby horse of mine. I'd rather Trump not be on Twitter. On the other hand, Jack Dorsey should have done a much better job of articulating why he was off Twitter and just giving him some kind of finite penalty, like 5 years or something. So he kind of was asking for it. And I'm not, and I don't object to the substance of Musk's ideological pronouncements on Twitter. I object to the fact of ideological pronouncement on Twitter. In other words, him turning it into an ideological pedestal, because I think that is flagrantly at odds with his professed aspiration to make it a better town square. The commissioner of the NFL doesn't get to root for a team in the Super Bowl. And if you're serious about the Twitter you own being a good town square, being, a healthy town square, if you think through all the implications of going on, pontificating all the time about your ideology and doing it in a trollish way, because he is a troll in that and other respects, he's like a bad Twitter citizen who now owns Twitter, and various of his tics constitute kind of bad Twitter citizenship. I just want to be clear. That's my objection. It is not the standard objection to Elon. It's that if he had my ideology, I'd be saying the same thing. Shut the fuck up if you really want to make it a good town square.
You're not the only person making that, and I think it's gotten to him. I think I get the sense that he's letting up on the politics. Now, part of that's because the election is over. Obviously, he thought when he urged people to vote Republican, he thought he might sway the election, okay? he probably had very little effect on the election. That may have been brought home to him. And he has to, as you say, he has to get the left to trust him, which is going to be quite hard. There was a very good analysis in Vox of his predicament, which is the revenues are declining, maybe not as much as the media thinks, but 15 to 50% of advertising is not chopped liver. He has to come up with new revenues, but the actual people on the site are sticking with him so far. And I saw Eric Swalwell had a post saying I think it was attacking something that the Republicans had done. He said, now Twitter, do your thing. And Twitter had done its thing for Eric Swalwell, a Democrat, and it was working for the Democrats. And as long as it keeps working for the Democrats, I don't think they're going to leave. Elon just has to figure out how to extract some money from them.
Okay. Yeah, I want to say more about that in the Parrot Room. What else in the Parrot Room besides Elon? You're a little spat with Damon Linker on Twitter. Let's talk a little about that.
It's about Peter Thiel and Curtis Yarvin. And what do we know about Peter Thiel? You seem to really dislike him for reasons I'm not sure are very grounded in evidence.
I consider him opaque and kind of disturbing in his opaqueness. I don't purport to actually have him figured out.
Okay. There's the whole Fuentes thing, which we sort of missed, I think.
Oh yeah, we should talk about Yi.
I tried to figure out how big the gap was between what smart people on the left are saying, like Josh Marshall, and smart people on the right are saying, and I came away with the conclusion that the gap is huge. I sort of think the Republican Party is in big trouble because they have no center.
Okay.
They have nothing between Ryan and denying.
Okay, don't go further. You want to keep them on the edge of the seats. They're reaching for the credit cards, Mickey. Okay. Patreon.com/Parrot Room, folks.
And wait, I have something more. I have things to say about bribing women to take your sperm.
Okay. More credit cards. I hear them.
This thought occurred to me.
Women. I'm writing this out. To do what? What'd you say?
To take your sperm. Okay. There was some evidence that Twitter has brought more right wingers into it, but I wasn't very convinced.
That comes under the general category of Elon and Twitter.
And there's a point people are making about China that I don't understand. So
okay, China. I got to the end of that Errol Morris documentary on the guy in the CIA who plunged to his death in 1953 after the CIA slipped him LSD, and there's actually a surprise kind of at the end, a kind of a dark surprise. Seymour Hersh shows up, has something to say. What else?
Wasn't it Cream that had a dark surprise? Show me your dark surprise.
Yeah. Let's see. Wait, there was something else. Christy McVie of Fleetwood Mac died. I'm going to give you the Christy McVie trivia quiz in the Parrot Room. I've got it set up because you're often bragging about how much you know about rock and roll.
The answer is Chicken Shack.
That's good. Now, one of the questions is going to be, what was her given last name? Do you know what the answer to that is?
Yes, perfect.
Shit. Because I was going to say, Mickey, I'll give you a hint. It's just perfect. And you were going to go,
sorry.
Songwriter? Anyway.
I look forward to this.
Oh, man. Well, I've got others. And so maybe Mayor Adams is planning to get homeless. We'll see what we have time for. Okay. Patreon.com/.
Okay. I think one candidate had a very good plan for the homeless. I'll reveal her name.
Okay. All right. So much incentive.
Okay. Carrie Lake.
Okay. That was a pretty half-assed parrot utterance, but the parrot will be more full-throated in the Parrot Room. See you there.